say how delighted we are to have you, and just to ask you a little bit about, what's been going on in the Russian market.
The Russian market. The Russian market since 2008, 2009 has been moving from one crisis to the other. And it seems never to stop. However, the crisis in Russia is not so much working like it would in Europe and other markets, that everything stops. And what has been a very, very consistent appearance in spite of all kinds of crises going on is that real estate continues to work. So as soon as it gets difficult and you have the exchange rate difficulties and stuff like this, people pour money into real estate. And that has been consistent in spite of crisis in 2011, 2013. In spite of what is going on right now, people are pouring money into real estate. So the real estate side continues to work. Some of it is a little bit delayed, of course, like I suppose everywhere, but in general, it is working from the real estate side very well. So that's probably the first area which concerns the 2013 up till to now. The pandemic, so basically end of 2019, beginning of 2020, there's been a huge influence on the development of tourism in general. And the pandemic has actually created a situation which is unique, and a first time for as long as I've been in Russia, is that tourism has become a national project for the Russian Federation government and state. So the first time our politicians sort of mentioned tourism at all was back in, I think, 2013, 14, which was the first time they even, bothered to make some news and mention it at all. But after that, it's been mentioned quite a lot. But since the pandemic, it's almost become one of the central priorities for the Russian government to continue. And this focus, apart from the sort of aid efforts that they're trying to put in place to save the tourism industry in general, the key areas that they're focusing on right now is development of tourism clusters and the development of internal tourism. So that's the two key areas. The third area that they're trying to find ways to solve, because what you have the Russian Federal Agency for Tourism, and they've made quite a big statement that a lot of the hotel infrastructure in Russia is out of date, especially when it comes to resort type location and countryside or tourists, like adventure tourist destination and stuff like that. So what they're very much focusing on right now is the development of what they call good quality accommodation and tourism infrastructure. And the latest, which is now, it's not yet been totally improved, but there are some pilot projects which has taken place just starting before the New Year's Eve, where they're doing favorable credits to those that develop hotels in certain tourism locations. And with the subsidies that they provide for the interest, you can even get the loan rate down to 3.75%. Now, 3.75% is in Russia unheard of. It's usually somewhere around 10-11%. And lately, if you look at mortgage rates, most mortgage rates are somewhere between 6 to 8%. So getting credit finance for development of hotels down to about 3.75, that's something unheard of and new. So there's also been some positive news with regards to tax rates. So for example, there is a law which is being evaluated right now to make the VAT rate for tourism and tourism infrastructure 10% as opposed to the normal VAT what you have. And they're also talking about reducing the social charges on the salaries, if the social charges on the salaries is 30.2% in general. What we're looking at possibly now coming during 2021 is 15% for tourism infrastructure. So this is really incredible what is happening, and it's the first time in all the time that I've been here that we've seen something like this. What is also very interesting on which are the areas in Russia which is mainly the focus of this development. I mean, Moscow and St. Petersburg always get their share, but the key focus right now is, of course, on Sochi, Crimea, Kaliningrad, and casinos, and things like Altai and these beautiful areas on the right-hand side of Russia, so including the Kafkas and skiing and all these kinds of things. But there is one more unique thing happening, which I think is going to be quite unique to Russia, is the opening up Arctic tourism through Murmansk. And as part of this development, Murmansk has become a special economic zone, just like Kaliningrad. So from this point of view, I think that Russia will probably take the lead when it comes to Arctic tourism in the next coming years. So that's absolutely fantastic.
If we go back to sort of pre-2014, 2015, Russia was very much, I think, a poster boy for international development growth for the major hotel brands. Hilton, I remember were incredibly active. Residor were incredibly active. Marriott was incredibly active. What's the current state of hotel brands at the moment? Are the international players quietly working behind the scenes in the same way they were before? And are there any Russian brands, domestic brands that are stepping into the market as well?
When it comes to the Russian international brands, or when it comes to the international brands, they're more or less, I wouldn't say the growth is very much slower, but it is growing at a very regular pace, meaning that you have about the same number of hotels coming into the market as you had before, but the percentage growth is much less as what we used to see. So this kind of very high percentage growth from almost nothing to a little bit more what we used to have until 2014. In the speed of growth, they're probably doing the same amount of hotels every year.
Yep.
But when you talk about percentage in relation to the whole of the Russian market, I don't think the percentage of the market has increased significantly. It's probably stagnant or maybe even gone back a little bit. And there are several key areas for this. First of all, lots of Russian developers have sort of said, well, we've tried the international brands. We basically got the staff to do it, so we figured out how to do it ourselves. Generally, in their mentality, it's about we must have much more control over the properties that we own, and they mainly focus on developing their own hotels. There are some that do go for the franchise. And in this sense, you know, you will see the growth of the internationals. I think the ones that get the biggest benefit from this part is Accor and Hilton.
Yeah.
So from the others, they are not so much strong in the franchise side, so they grow a little bit slower for that reason. But the Russians are building a lot of hotels, and it's very, very difficult to figure out, you know, which hotels comes online, where and when, and stuff like this. But we're working on the country report from now. I hope to have it published next week. And from this report, you will see that the Russian independent hotels are growing more than the chain hotels. Now, when it comes to a second part of why the Russian independent hotels is growing faster, it's due to one phenomenon, which is the development of apartment hotels. And this has been the biggest growing part of real estate, mainly in Moscow and St. Petersburg, but it's now moving into the regions and into CIS. And some companies like Accor, for example, have gone into this kind of franchise area, but most chains are having big problems due to the multi-property situation of these properties that you have. You know, they're quite big. They can generally be from 500 up to 4,000 rooms. And, you know, when you're talking about properties that have 2,500, 3,000 owners, not a lot of chains are willing to handle such a situation. So they usually do a small part, which will be like a advertising franchise kind of thing, and the other part, which will be residences, will be managed by somebody else. But this is one of the biggest growths we've seen over the past 4 to 5 years. Now, regarding local chains, which are growing, and I would say even more about the, if we can call them local oligarchs, which are getting into the tourism and the hotel development business. I think Azimuth was there always and have been in there for a long time, but they're growing aggressively. The new, I wouldn't call them a newcomer, but the ones that have increased the development in this area is the Cosmos Group, which is financed by AFK Systems, for example. There are a few smaller other ones which are now, I have a difficulty calling them a chain, because I can't really say that they have strong brands that are recognized across the whole hotel of Russia. But there are things like Usta Group and Maxima Hotels and a few others, which are not quite there yet, but they're quite close to getting to this reaction. So I think that it will be very interesting to see how the Russian hotel chains are going to develop further. And most probably, they are going to be a lot stronger in the smaller regional cities than your traditional international hotels. So I think that that's going to be very interesting. There are some like Azimuth, first of all, which is trying to develop their own international chapter, which I think is also interesting to see how these Russian chains are developing and how they are going to move into different kinds of typical resort or city locations where you have a big chunk of Russian tourists, for example, like south of France, Italy, maybe even your lovely London.
Dubai possibly.
Dubai for sure.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting times.